actually, I just got a text for somebody who wanted to have a comment read in.
Go ahead.
That's,
Go ahead and
this
read
is
it.
from Jessica Mancini. I've not read this before, so forgive me. Members of the board, in reference to the cannabis establishment in Ridgefield, I am concerned about the board's stance and comments to date. I've enclosed my letter that I sent to the Ridgefield P&Z below. Please review. At the past P&Z meeting, they decided to schedule a public hearing for a 1-year moratorium. This is not acceptable. The reason was to give your board more time to discuss this issue and give the opportunity for our community to vote in the upcoming election or the budget referendum. Did you do this with all the liquor stores and the most recent smoke shop on Main Street? ? Or are you allowing your feelings and your generational biases to impact your decision making on this specific legal cannabis establishment? Whether it is your intention or not, there are only a specific amount of licenses given in Connecticut, and by issuing any length of moratorium, you block opportunity and entrepreneurship. As time passes, licenses diminish and become unavailable. Is this your intention? I'm asking that you put your feelings aside and understand that if you take issue with the legalization of cannabis, that it should be addressed in Hartford. And there's the letter to the P&Z. I don't know, but I think the
Says
comment
the
to
same
us,
thing.
the comment to us probably suffices to
Okay.
get the feeling of this particular constituent.
Okay.
Or we could
And I
include
think
it in our
we all
next
have a
packet.
copy of this letter,
Yeah.
this
if you
email.
could
I think it's,
email it to me so we can make a copy of it.
we're all on the distribution of the email, that it
Okay.
just came.
Great.
Okay, same page. I just wanted to report on the, John, it was July 27th, the Planning and Zoning Commission met?
Beg your pardon?
The date of the P&Z meeting, the last one, 27th. At that meeting, which I attended, and I don't know.
I was
think
listening in, yeah.
You were listening in, or the rest of you may have. The commission voted to hold a public hearing on September 14th, at which time the public can weigh in on the statute allowing for a retail and a cultivation business to be established in Ridgefield. Under the statute, you're limited to one of each per 25,000 people, which means we can only have one of each if it were to be approved. And there's a great deal of latitude with the commission relative to, or even by ordinance, about where, the time of operations, etc. The commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, felt that this being a major issue should be back with the Board of Selectmen as an ordinance. And that's why originally I asked David to be here tonight, to be sure that I was correct in stating it could be done by ordinance, and does the same latitude apply relative to the ordinance concerning if we were to say, okay, we could limit where, we could limit the hours of operation, etc. The question at the end of your meeting, and that was in reference to the retail part of it, the question at the end of the meeting came up, well, what about a farming operation? That's definitely land use. So since you're here, I'll ask the question of you and David. Do we have the statutory right to be able to, by ordinance, restrict both cultivation, which is land use, and retail in this situation?
I would defer to council, for sure.
Yeah, and the way this is,
I want you to use the microphone if you can. David, thank you.
yeah, I thought I had sent this pamphlet out that I got as part of a seminar that I attended on this.
No,
I don't know
because you
why you
felt the
didn't get it.
seminar wasn't really worthwhile. is what you
Well,
told me.
when they sent they didn't have this stuff at the seminar. It would have been a lot easier to understand what they were talking about.
Oh.
When I got this, it was
They sent it
much
after.
better.
Oh,
They did
I-
it after.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, well, I asked that they send it to you. I
Okay.
don't know what happened.
Okay.
We'll check into it, but
But
it's a
if
pretty
you
good
could
little
send
summary.
that, and
Yes,
I
I
can
will.
distribute it to everyone, that would be great.
I will, and you know, the question you ask is an interesting one. Without, you know, I think we can start where you asked, because I think that's an interesting point. So what happens is, the way the statute is set up is that, as you pointed out, you can have one of each type, and there are 11 different categories, but I think one is intended to be the recreational use, and then you can combine that with a recreational use and growing use, and there are so many different uses that, you know, it's not, I
So
don't think
someone
it's,
could apply for a permit to do both,
yes, they could.
to
could.
cultivate and to sell.
And that's one of the categories here. I was gonna just look at this quickly and
Cultivation and selling?
Does it have to be this, could it be different
There are-
locations, or
there
could it be
are-
the same
there are-
location?
there are 12 categories here.
Oh,
So you've got things like a producer, a cultivator, a micro cultivator, a product manager, food and beverage, manufacturing, product packaging, dispensing facility, hybrid retailer, retailer, delivery service, and
So
transporter.
does the law allow one of those?
No.
Oh,
You can
okay.
have one recreational type of thing and one medicinal thing.
Medicinal.
But the
But
medicinal.
what about the cultivation?
well,
So if you do
that's part-
cultivation, you cannot do a retail?
They have what they call a hybrid retailer. He can do, that's why it's, to get into this tonight would just confuse everybody. It's a confusing topic. There are a lot of different categories, but the basic concept is you at least have to have one, if you're gonna have two, one has to be retail and one can be cultivation and retail, cultivation and, I don't know, I don't have a definition of all these things because the statute is, like 300 pages long.
Right.
But, I mean, we can talk about that, but you can have one of each, and they could be combinations.
So
But you can
one
only have,
farming, general
you could
category
only
of
end
farming.
up probably with two, is the answer.
One general category of farming and the other general category of retail.
Right.
David, what was the thing
medicinal and retail.
that was mentioned in the text where if they don't apply soon, they're going to be out of, there was
Well,
11,
okay.
Permits or something.
This
What's
is
the
so,
deal with
this
that?
is so complicated, the way they've done this. So the first thing you have to do is get into the lottery. There's a lottery run by the Department of Consumer Protection, which is the major state entity that regulates this. And then if you are lucky enough to win the lottery, and we one of the number chosen, and I don't know how many they're gonna choose, then you have to go to the Department of Consumer Protection and this other entity that's been formed and be vetted. They have to go, they check you out and determine whether you're an upstanding citizen and whether you have the ability to do whatever you claim you're gonna be able to do. And then, once you're cleared through all that, which isn't gonna happen until at least sometime next spring. There's not gonna be anything happening until next spring.
Okay.
When you're cleared for that, then you can look for a location. Because until you're cleared, you can't go look for a location.
So they can't come to Ridgefield
They
and
can't
say,
come to
okay.
Ridgefield and say, I wanna do this. They haven't been going through the whole process.
They'd have to go through that
and
first
the way
before.
they have explained this to us is that vetting process will take at least into the spring of 2022.
So the people that win the lottery might not necessarily even,
Be in
Qualify.
Ridgefield.
right, be close to Ridgefield.
The lotteries for the whole state. And the state's gonna let so many people apply, and then they're gonna start looking for homes.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, Ridgefield, because we're 25,000 people, can locate one farming, one retail in our town.
We can
Okay.
do a number
They
of.
could issue a permit for Ridgefield.
Okay.
And what we can do, I mean, there's several ways this can be handled, three basic ways. One is that you can let it be a planning and zoning issue. And that's what some towns have done. Of course, Newtown let it be a planning and zoning issue, then they put a moratorium on it for a year. But,
As did Danbury.
so, and that's what a lot of people are doing, because not much is gonna happen in a year. And people just didn't wanna get their hands around it, because it's a fairly complicated process. But there are three basic things that you have to, be concerned about here. Let me have this. Whether the Planning and Zoning Commission should regulate it. In other words, they could say that we will have, this type of store, cause they could specify the use, and that type of store in town, and they can only be in whatever, B1 zone or B2 zone, whatever zone they pick. And so, it could be regulated that way.
Zoning, right.
It could be a pure zoning regulation.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
And then, but they also allow the towns to regulate it by an ordinance. Now, the town could say in an ordinance that you can't do it in town. I mean, you can't do that. You can say no. If you say yes, then I think by implication, you're gonna have to get involved with the Planning and Zoning Commission, because, you can say, yes, we can have this, and we can restrict it to certain areas, But, you know, at some point you get into zoning, so I think you're gonna end up, if you say yes, that you can do some, you can do the two, in some place in town, planning and zoning is, it really should be part of the process.
So the question has more to do with if the, let's say, we want to go to a referendum, and that came up at the P and Z discussion, and they were gonna, the public hearing then recommend something for the ballot this November, but we have to have all questions into the Secretary of State by the second or
September
third,
2nd.
Yeah, September 2nd.
And
So
it'll
it's
never happen.
impossible. Yeah.
Right.
It'll never happen.
So
And then you
I
can't-
had asked during the meeting to extend it so that we could pull in the referendum in our budget
Budget
cycle,
referendum,
Well,
right,
but-
in May.
But let me, the other complication on that end is that there's a provision in the statute, section 83, which provides that on a petition of at least 10% of the electorate, and that's 1,900 people here,
Right.
you can have a referendum, and the referendum could be any, and there are a list of things it could be. It could be nothing, the referendum to say yes or no to the whole process, or you could say yes or no to certain things. I mean, there are variations on that.
So I had a couple of people ask that question about a petition, so
Right.
let's just focus on that for now. If there were to be a petition, what I stated to them is that please structure the language so that we can get it to town council for approval,
And the
because that's required.
And the statute has certain things that you have to have in there.
Right, and that's for your review, and you
Right.
will approve
Right.
the language. Assuming you did, that petition would then say, does it fall under our charter? Because if we receive a petition for a vote, we have so many days from receipt of the verified petition by the town clerk that the Board of Selectmen receives it to hold a town meeting.
Yeah,
Or
well, we're not
referendum.
talking about town, we're talking about a referendum.
Re-
If you do a
referendum.
referendum, you only do it once a year. Because it has to be a true referendum, which would be.
Not a special referendum just for this.
No, you
So
have
it
to do
would
it
be
at an
like a
election, it has to be at an
An
election.
existing election.
On
So
an
you-
election,
So the
And
petition
you
thing
can't do
won't
it this
work?
year for an election, because there's no way in the world you can get the 1,900 people to sign a petition, vet it.
This is very, very important, because if planning and zoning is going to approve a moratorium for a year, let's say, to allow the Board of Selectmen, and we cannot put it on a budget referendum, it has to go on an
I
election
looked at
referendum?
that today, and I think that's what it says, that it says it has
We
to be
need
at
to
an
know that,
election.
because,
Yeah, I mean.
Wait, so I'm sorry, when you say, so, I understand there's a difference between a special election, something set up specifically for that.
for an individual
Right.
topic.
Right, an individual topic, which clearly, that's not it. But if it misses the November election, like, isn't the budget election an existing election?
It
I don't
is.
know why it wouldn't be
It's
able
a
to
The
budget
budget
that.
election is not a budget referendum.
It's a
Yes, it
budget
is.
referendum, not an
Oh.
election
It says,
Not an
referendum.
election.
it's, I don't have the provision, I mean, there's,
And have
Yeah,
there
but
been
if somebody has the
interpretations of it and
1,900
things like that
signatures
already?
to trigger the
Jesus.
charter's special election, is this going
It's not a-
against our
Well,
charter?
I think what he's saying is it's not a special election.
It's not a
It's gotta be an
special
existing
election.
election.
It's
So then-
gotta
be an
a-
election.
So then they can't sign 19, they couldn't do a petition then?
Well, they could do a petition, but it's not gonna trigger
not gonna
an
trigger
election until,
anything
it
until
seems
the
like the
next
earliest would be
November.
next
Until
November.
next November.
An election. I was thinking, when I spoke at P&Z, that a referendum's a referendum, whether it's a budget or an election.
It's an election defined in section 9-1 of the general statutes, and the way I read it, an election is a vote for
Officers of the town.
either the state or the local,
Is that what it says?
November election.
defines it, 9-1 defines it clearly.
Okay.
So you gotta look at that, and so you can only, if that happens, in other words, if somebody wants to do it by a petition to a referendum, then it can only be
An
at a very
election
limited
referendum.
time.
Right,
And there's no way in the world you can have that happen this year.
okay.
So, that's maybe why what I heard in listening to many different discussions at the state, that if the Planning and Zoning Commission or the town, either by zoning regulation or ordinance, said yes or no, 10% of the electorate could call for a petition to reverse that decision.
Yeah,
either way.
Yeah.
And that 10%, if they got the signatures and we accepted it, would have to be at the next election referendum.
Yeah.
So they're giving time for the town or the Planning and Zoning Commission to decide, and then allowing basically what is an appeal.
But there are towns that are doing this, and you can just go to the border to Brewster anyway, so.
But Rudy,
Yeah, I know,
they're
I know.
doing they're going against our town charter basically though, by defining the fact that the election the vote can only be taken at an election, because in our town
And
charter,
that's what I was getting
understand.
at.
Yeah.
The
But
town
state,
charter
state overrules.
allows
Charter,
a
okay.
petition meeting, and with a non-appropriation issue, it calls for 2% of the electorate.
It's,
This statute says, I think statute would supersede us, right, and overrule
Right.
by saying that, no, you'd have to have 10% to appeal whatever decision the P and Z
you
Commission
could
makes.
send
with
it to
the
a
town.
referendum. You could send it to, you, as the selectman, you could say that we want it to go to a referendum. I
But that
mean,
would be a non-binding referendum.
No, you
No?
could send it to next year.
But
Next
isn't that
year,
what is
it has to be an
required?
election
Yeah, next
referendum
year.
still.
If
Well,
you wanted to,
But a
why would you do
petition,
that?
but a
Yeah.
petition can only go to an election. Is that what you're saying?
No.
That a
I-
petition referendum can only go to an election?
What I'm hearing is this
Because you're
specific
saying
process.
he could send it to
Yeah.
an,
Well, that's
Can
what they
only go to
talk
an
about in
election.
the statute. It says upon the petition, so that's really what they're talking about. With 10% of the electors of the municipality lodged with the town clerk within 60 days before a regular election is defined in 9-1. A regular election is an election for representatives, local.
Local or federal or state
right.
election.
Yeah.
So
election.
that's a petition
Yes.
for a referendum. So
Right.
so what you're saying is that,
You've got one of those sinking chairs. I just noticed.
it's okay, I'm gonna be on the floor soon anyhow. So.
But you're right, your train of thought, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, we could send it to a regular referendum, if we chose.
If it's not a petition.
If it wasn't a
So it's
petition.
not a petition. So that could advise us, but I think the point of this is, if they do the petition and it goes to an election, and presumably the majority, right, or 2/3 or whatever it says, comes back and says, no, we oppose what P and Z has gone through, then we're bound by that. Versus I think what the P and Z was even discussing was a non-binding referendum, not election, right? But why would you do that if you can do that the real election later on?
Well, and also that would completely confuse people, because
Yeah.
if they, a non-binding, they vote
Non-binding
yes or no, and then
referendum.
we're not,
Yeah.
then we're ignoring what they said?
I
Exactly,
think the
Right.
That would be
process,
ridiculous.
the process we're talking about, and that the state, and I don't know what the legislative intent was or isn't, maybe you could research that. It's still pretty fresh.
It is very fresh, and as I say, it's like a
Confusing.
100-page. No, it's more. It's a 200-page.
But I think the petition is a vehicle for people who object to the decision that the elected officials
Correct.
make.
Correct.
I
yes,
think that's clearly what's in the statute,
Right.
Section 83.
So whether it's by P and Z or by the Board of Selectmen, that decision will be made, whether by ordinance or by zoning regulation. Once that decision is made, the statute allows the right of appeal.
Yep.
And that appeal calls for 10% of the elected to sign the petition, verified, and that question then goes on the next election referendum.
Yes.
But that would be a
To
year from
overturn.
then, right?
Yeah.
A year
Yeah.
from
Yeah, a year.
November. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, people will be very upset
Well,
about
but
this.
you're not going to
right?
Well,
have.
I don't know, what
That's
else do
what-
you do?
I know.
But it's not like, I think what the point he was saying earlier is, take that aside. Say we said, let's go full force. We're not trying to deny. You don't have to go through all of
Yeah.
that. The earliest you could possibly have even people looking for sites would be next spring.
Okay, right.
So,
Right.
and I guess that triggers one of the
Okay.
questions that I had is this sort of passive or active? Do we in the statute, does it say the town has got to decide? We've got to affirm that we're okay with this, or do we have to affirm that we're denying it? Or is it an assumption that if we don't do anything in the near term, that we're not supporting it? Right?
No, I think no action would leave the door open.
Well, here's what
references are okay.
here's what
Yeah,
it
that's
says.
true. I
Here's
agree
what
with
the
that.
statute says. It says that at a municipal election, to determine whether or not the recreational sale of marijuana shall be permitted in such municipality. 1, 2, whether the sale of marijuana shall be permitted in such municipality in one or more classes of license of cannabis.
That's the 11 classes you were talking about?
No, this
No,
is
that's just.
establishments. The ballot label designation in a vote upon the question of cannabis established license shall be, and then it talks about it, shall the sale of recreational marijuana be allowed? That's one. Shall the sale of cannabis under specific licenses, the types that we're talking about, be allowed? And the name of the municipality. Shall the sale of recreational marijuana be prohibited? And that's the other thing. And then finally, the other one is shall be provided in accordance with the provisions of 9-50, 250 of the general statute, which I don't have in front of me. But again, it's very specific as to what the referendum could be on.
The question.
The referendum, yes.
Questions. But you can take control of it yourselves. I mean, in the first place, if you're not sure of anything, you should do what some of the other towns have done, is just do a moratorium for a year and study it. I mean, why should we?
Well, that's the proposal, right?
Why
That's
should
the town
we
meeting.
rush
That's
to
what's
it?
on the table.
And I don't think they're gonna lose out, because number one, they can't give everything to one town, because it says here that, you know, you can only it's by 25,000, so you could do 2 of each facility, of the 2 facilities, so you could do 4 if you have a town of 50,000, and so and thereabouts, you know. So, I mean, it's gonna be spread out, and then they're gonna limit certain numbers by virtue of the fact that they're only gonna vet a certain number of
Right.
users.
And
So
I think
we don't know any of that right
They're
now. We
gonna
don't know how
skew
many.
toward the cities.
Yeah, and we don't know any of that. And then it changes in 2024. They have
It
another.
opens up.
It
The
opens up.
25,000 limitation disappears.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an ongoing thing,
It's crazy.
and the only thing that it seems to make a lot of sense right now, unless you're really strongly in favor of it, is to do a moratorium and let's see where everything
Well,
falls.
that's what planning and zoning has in front, and it is the topic of the public hearing on September 14th.
I mean, if everybody's really in favor of it and you want to go forward, then, you know, you're probably okay. But if there's some doubt and you want to see what's going on and where it all shakes out,
I think
you
there
might
are
wanna-
people on both sides of the issue.
Right.
People feel very strongly on this.
Well,
I don't know if
it's no longer a crime. I mean, it's one of the first things that the statute does is it decriminalizes all of this. So,
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's,
in
and
small
that's,
amounts.
and that's effective now.
yes.
Well,
As
the
of- as of-
September
as of
14th
July
public
1.
hearing should be very
I have people smoking.
Good
John,
for
I don't
us,
know where
right?
you're holding that, John, do you know?
Beg your pardon?
Where is the public hearing going to
I
be?
don't know if that's been decided. As far as I know, we're still remote.
Oh,
Mm.
so we have to provide a room for people to be able to testify.
Yeah.
Or the remote, those who want to stay home and testify can, but.
Sir, can I ask a question? So, if we put the moratorium, like some other towns are doing, does that limit, so if there's only limited state licenses, does that make it less likely, for whatever we decide that we do wanna go forward, does that make it less likely that we'd get one of those state licenses, or is that
You know,
the timing of that
first
not-
place, that requirement's gonna probably come off by 2024. I mean, maybe
Correct.
that's a long time from now. But I don't, there's nobody said how many they're gonna allow for.
Yeah.
It just says, you go into a pool and we're gonna pick how many we want.
I
And
think
it's up to the
most
Department of
states
Consumer
said if you
Protection.
want-
They're gonna-
Eventually,
the
it'll get,
state's
if
gonna
you want
do
one.
the vetting
Yeah,
of them.
You can
So
get it.
we have no.
No, you might be able to do
Colorado
further
Oh.
vetting, but they're gonna at least say that these people have won the lottery and that they are, by our standards, they are qualified to do this. Now, you may wanna put more stringent standards on it, doesn't say you can't.
I mean, that's something we have to consider, like, how do we evaluate, especially if there's one retail operation in town? But we talked about this a little bit last time, is it whoever comes up
Well, I
first,
mean,
or
if you-
what's
if
the
you-
criteria?
5 applicants.
Huh?
It's gonna be whoever gets the.
Is it
What's
the,
the lottery.
the state determines it? Yeah.
One
don't
thing
have a
to
choice.
try to find out is the type of things that are being applied for.
At
I
least
mean,
We-
the way
Yeah,
it's being interpreted right now.
well, I guess, well,
Until
what,
it's
if so if 2 people win the lottery, and they both say, well, I'd like an operation in Ridgefield, right? So,
I don't know
do
if
they,
the
does
state's
the
gonna
state decide
allow
that, or?
The state may pick one operator for Ridgefield, one license.
they won't pick it for the towns. They're just gonna say generally you are permitted to look for a site.
Yeah, so
Oh.
people, so that's what I was listening. So if multiple people are permitted to a site, and multiple say, I'd like to pick Ridgefield, and so we may have more than one operator come here. And I just think, obviously this is
So-
down the line, but we would have to determine if there were multiple.
So here are
maybe
the
not.
key steps in the process. Applications are accepted for the lottery.
Wow.
Soon, I guess. The lottery winners are selected. Review by the Department of Consumer Protection and this other entity, the SEC, which is a new entity of the lottery winners. Provisional licenses are provided, and then in the next 14 months, applicants will secure siting and initiate construction. So they're talking about a long period.
It's a long-
This isn't gonna happen
yeah,
Yeah,
overnight.
see, what I don't wanna happen is that somebody in Hartford say, okay, you know, and we're gonna, pardon me for being blunt on this, but I mean, for them to pick and choose, you know, large corporations or whatever, and say, okay, we're gonna give it to you, and then, okay, we want you to, you know, it might not be a public thing,
Well,
but we want you to open up in Ridgefield, or, you know,
That-
I just think
I don't know
that,
that that's what they were talking about. I think what they're saying is Ridgefield could say, we're only gonna look at, there are 12 categories. We're only gonna let you, if you're gonna do this, well, there are only 2 for the recreational, but we're only gonna let small stores in, and we can do that. We can
Limit
we
the
can
square
to a-
footage,
Yeah, you can limit
do
the
all
square
that.
footage, sure. I mean, there's a lot of variations. That's why rushing into this
but
seems to be.
but Hartford's
Yeah,
gonna be.
but
the
you know,
one
it's
that's
not gonna get any
be-
Where
easier.
are we
I
gonna
think it's gonna
vet?
get
But
worse.
they're not vetting it for a location. They're just vetting them.
Alright, so I can go and I can apply for it, and I can open up, then I can, you know.
Then you search for your location.
You get a
vet
green
it.
light from the state.
You get a
Yeah,
green
and
light
then
that
you
you're
have to go
certified
find a spot.
to go forward,
And you
but then
can-
you would have to come here. And
And-
at some point, I assume that again, should there be multiple, vendors,
And
We would
we would have to
vet
make a
them.
decision, right?
We
We
would
would
have
have to
to
vet.
Right, but
Yeah,
they're
but
gonna,
would we do it, or would planning and zoning do that?
well, that's the question. I
Well,
mean,
that's the question.
we
it
have to
seems to me that if you
resolve.
allow,
Right.
if the town passes an ordinance, which would, primarily what I think they're talking about is prohibiting it, because if the
Yeah.
town passes an ordinance and says we're gonna allow, this use and that use in town, then you're getting into planning and zoning factors. I
Yeah,
mean,
but planning and zoning said this is a policy issue more than a land use. Am I correct in stating that,
I
John?
think that's what, there was no full vote taken, but I think.
Right.
And
The
I-
Fully your
consensus.
perspective, that was,
And
yeah.
I
The
think that's
consensus
true.
was, so if it is, and we say, this scenario, we say, yeah, okay, we'll allow one of each, a farmer and a retail. Now, once we say okay, we can say it is a land use decision where,
Right.
and the hours and all of that.
Right.
But the
That's true.
overall decision, I think P and Z is saying, that's up to the town whether we
Yes.
want it or we don't.
Right.
Is that a
That,
fair?
I think that's
Yeah, and I
exactly.
think
well,
that's
that
right.
That could certainly
That's
work, and then,
exactly
and then the
right.
P and Z can decide where they're gonna allow that use.
Yes.
Exactly, and they
I'm
should,
gonna say
they're the ones
Yeah,
that
that
should
works.
decide it.
Absolutely.
Main
Because
Street
to
or
Sean's
along the,
point,
Right.
or
it
some
is a
other-
land
Right.
use.
At that point, it
decision.
becomes, once we
Yes.
agree that we're
It's,
going forward.
yeah, if we're gonna go
And I
forward or
think-
not, yeah.
Kind of without my hearing it directly, that's my takeaway, was that the P and Z Commission would say, policy-wise,
Right.
let the Board of Selectmen, and whether it's a vote or however that happens in an ordinance, let them decide, and then if the decision is to move forward, it becomes a land use. If the answer,
That's-
yeah,
yeah.
if we say no, then it's
Then it
over
takes-
until there's a
Right.
petition, and the
Or you
petition
decide to do it again.
would be brought to the next
Election.
cycle.
Yep.
But maybe the P and Z and the selectmen should talk about what they both have in mind. I mean, so at least they're on the same page.
Well, right now, we know that the P and Z Commission has a public hearing established for September 14th, and a subsequent vote, when, I don't know, to declare a one-year moratorium. That's it.
Well, that's what Newtown did.
And then they're saying it's up to the Board of Selectmen to decide from a policy perspective whether we should allow it. And once they decide that, then land use comes back into it.
Right.
Makes sense.
That's exactly right.
We're going to go ahead with it.
Right.
If the town decides by referendum that it should not be allowed.
Then it's dead.
It's a dead issue.
Until the petition comes in, and if it's overridden, then it's back to P and Z.
Right. So, David, have they published a criteria to qualify for the lottery? Or if you.
I haven't, I mean, really, this is so new. I mean, I went to this seminar last week. I mean, people are just starting to get into this. Honestly, I haven't seen anything yet. All I have is the statute. which is again, 200 and some odd pages long.
Have
But it
any
almost sounds
towns-
like, sorry,
Okay.
it almost sounds like there's a lottery first and then the evaluation, right, that they qualify.
Well, yeah,
Correct.
but
Right.
you gotta be, there should be some qualifications.
You would
even
think, but
to get into the lottery,
Right.
yeah.
Well, there
I mean,
may,
do you have to have, like, it's like, buying a franchise in a sense, okay? Are you going to, you're gonna have to have a $2 million net worth.
Yeah.
well,
But
I
it's
don't,
something that comes later. I wonder if it's just a matter of, we don't know what the numbers are. So, if we have, I don't know, 10,000 applications or whatever, we know we're gonna have X number of possibilities. So therefore we wanna limit it to that. So just, I don't know
No,
that there is a.
I don't think they've clarified it yet. I
Yeah,
think
neither-
that's
Well, that's
really.
why we don't
You
know,
know,
that's
you know
why I
what,
was asking the
it
question.
really
do we
seems to
know
me
what
that,
is?
we don't know all we wanna know and could
Yeah, that's
possibly
fair.
know. And it seems to me that, it wouldn't hurt to at least take some time to let some of this sort out. It's so new, it's so
Oh, I think
vast.
so. I think so.
It would
Have
seem
any
to me to make
towns or
sense.
cities
What?
embraced it already and said, yes, put me up in the
There was some,
lottery? And
I had some statistics I thought I saw on this, in here. Let me just see if I had that, cause there were some statistics on that. There was a chart about Massachusetts versus Connecticut on this.
Oh, well,
It's interesting. Massachusetts is twice the size, so.
yeah.
But you were asking, are there towns that
Yeah,
have
like
said,
saying,
like,
let's
pull
go.
forward, let's go,
Yeah.
And again, I guess the question I would have is.
Nobody's there yet.
Nobody's there yet.
No
It's too
one's there
early.
yet, okay,
It's too early.
okay.
Because
so
they
no one
haven't
has-
vetted anybody yet, and I don't even know if they've set the criteria for vetting people. So even if the town said you could do it, nothing's gonna happen, and because there's gonna be the licensing won't happen.
Well, you hope that they're gonna vet them before they put them in the lottery.
What he said, what I heard is
Exactly, that's what you
lottery,
just
then
said,
Yeah,
vetting.
that's what he said, but they haven't really established.
Yeah, and I wonder, are they gonna put limitations on how much you can grow? I mean, 'cause I got a piece of property that I'm looking at.
Well, there are.
It's up there,
can't.
We're all gonna come pitch our tents and inhale.
I saw something on see, like, here they have like a timeline.
So we just adjourned the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, lottery applications, spring of 2022, and it'll be accepted and staggered by credentials. I don't know what that means.
And
Okay, so
what
there is some
credentials?
Right, it sounds like
So
they- that's
what
good.
Yeah,
credentials?
I'm sure it doesn't say that.
We're talking about the lottery and how they're vetting
And
people
in
that are
spring
gonna
of
be able to
'22, the
get in the
provisional
lottery.
licenses, review and approval, and then issue to provisional licensees, and then they go out looking for places. In summer of 2022, provisional license and review and approval, issue of provisional licenses in the summer.
So a lot of this.
You got a number, you got
Yeah,
another
there's
year
a number of
almost.
hurdles to go through if you're gonna be applying for a license, but our topic tonight, I just like to stay focused on the process we're gonna follow as a community, and recognizing that P and Z has a public hearing on September 14th, at which time you can attend, listen, it'll be a Zoom, possibly, and, we'll just have to set up a room for people, to participate. Richard does that anyway, right? He's already taken care of that.
You know, and there's no-
But that'll happen, and then it'll come back, I'm assuming, for the Board of Selectmen, the Planning and Zoning Commission would vote to ask the Board of Selectmen to determine as a policy whether it's a yes or no for the town. If we, here's my question, if we do that, we set up a referendum, we can establish a public hearing and, if we want, and a referendum date for that question.
Why would we set up a referendum if it potentially will go to a petition?
We don't know it's gonna go to a
You
petition.
don't know. That's what
Potentially,
you wanna
yeah.
do. I mean, if you think that you wanna go to a
But what if,
referendum on
if
it.
it's gonna go to a petition, what are they gonna petition?
Well,
Well, but
If there's no vote?
But what he's saying is, as a board of selectmen, we should vote on
We should-
whether we want it or we don't want it.
That's what I'm assuming, that we would vote.
And then
they
not
could
just
decide.
send it
Yeah,
to-
but
Well,
I don't think
but
you
you-
can file a petition on a Board of Selectmen vote.
But you have some of that
Yes,
because
you
you're
It's
do.
gonna-
the
Yeah.
ordinance you're petitioning, the establishment of an ordinance.
Well, okay.
Or a
But-
P and Z regulation.
Yeah, but we would, but
Well, he's got
it's
the
up
language
to
of the
us
petition,
to
right?
draft
Yeah,
an
but-
ordinance.
But an
whether we
ordinance,
want it or don't
an
want
ordinance
it.
is gonna require a town meeting anyway. Now, I suppose that town
It does.
meeting, we could
That-
petition,
that-
that town meeting without the 10% could be petitioned to a referendum.
Aye.
That's the charter.
Yeah.
But what we're saying, what we said before is that this statute overrides the charter. And that if we go to an ordinance as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, assuming that happens, we have to set a town meeting date or a referendum date for that.
Yeah.
And that's separate from the petition.
Now, if you go to a referendum on this, how, I don't know how that affects the application for a petition. I really don't. I mean, it
Well,
doesn't say.
if the vote by the people is to support it and do it, then there's no petition
There's no
necessary.
petition, right, I mean, they already got a
Only
vote on it.
if.
Oh, there may be a petition from people
Well,
who
there
want
could be.
Yes,
It'd
yeah,
be-
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Who aren't
There
happy
could
with
be
the outcome of the
a petition
referendum.
that they're the opposite side.
I don't think they've contemplated.
Either
that.
way, there could be a petition, but people have to have a reason to petition.
Yes.
Is it, can people, I mean, if people could petition every vote we do,
Well, they
I
never
don't
get enough
see-
signatures.
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
Well, that's 2%.
It's a referendum, isn't that what the petition is for? The petition would be 10% of the population votes to take this.
How often are you gonna get that?
Right, that's right, John.
Not many.
How many
That's
times
A
are you gonna get?
petition of the Board of Selectmen vote.
Of the policy, of
Of
the,
the,
The establishment of a policy by the Board of Selectmen.
once we,
I don't know if that, I think we have to go to an ordinance to establish this. That's what I read in the statute, either by regulation or by ordinance.
It could be done without an ordinance, but if you're gonna get involved, you would have to do an ordinance.
It can be
So-
done
so-
without an
Well,
ordinance.
it could be, because it says that the Planning and Zoning Commission could deal with it completely, unless you wanna ban it.
Right, but if we deal it, if we were to deal with it, it'd have to be by ordinance,
Yes.
right?
right,
Which
and
would
then
be
The
it
only
would have
way
to
we
go to
can
a town
establish
meeting.
an ordinance is through a town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
not a Board of Selectmen vote.
Right, and
We
then-
vote to bring it to them.
Yes.
Right, and then somebody could petition the.
The vote to bring it?
The ordinance.
Town meeting to a referendum.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
by charter.
Right. Or if you do nothing, somebody can still bring it, if they get 10%, they can still bring it to a referendum. I think that's the more logical way to do it.
yeah, that's the way I would see it play out, like, so, we go have a town meeting on an ordinance, town votes in whatever direction, someone's not gonna be happy,
Right.
they can go out and get 10%,
Either way.
either way, exactly,
Yeah.
either way,
Well,
and then go to, the referendum, which would be in
The
the
next
next
election.
November.
the chances of getting 10%.
Well, but I mean, that's
No,
what
I
it's saying,
don't
right?
think
They can
That's-
get it.
I don't think so.
You can go tomorrow to Stop and Shop and get 300 signatures in a day.
1,900?
1900
People
is
have done
not
it.
hard.
It's not that hard.
It's not
Okay.
hard.
It's work. It's a lot more work than 300 or 400 or 800.
Right,
But that's what the
Well,
process
there's
is.
gonna be
right?
strong feelings, I can assure you that.
There are.
They
Is there a
There are
timeline
already.
on the effort for a petition? So in other words, they submit the request language to town council approves it. Is there a timeline within which that has to be acted on?
Yes.
In the next election.
All it says is that it has to be, a petition has to be filed no later than 60 days prior to the next regular
Okay.
election.
Okay, 60 days prior to. So that's the timeline people would have
Right.
with a petition.
But
I
practically, it would have to be before then,
They'd have
because,
We have to be,
before
because we
that.
have to certify the
yeah,
signatures.
yeah.
well, not only you have to certify the signatures, but presumably, again, next year, it's September 2nd or so, by the time it'd have to go through.
Right, so-
I don't know, maybe that's 60
I
days or
don't think
close enough.
they were contemplating that but maybe
Yeah.
it'll happen, who knows?
Well, the
I
next
don't know.
election in
I don't
November,
think they were
but
contemplating
can't happen.
Yeah,
much.
maybe that's 60 days anyway,
You-
but
you
still, it would
can't-
have to be in
You can't get,
sometime before September.
you've got, it's August 11th. You would have to get, in 3 weeks, you would have to get 1,900 signatures on there.
no, it's not gonna happen in that.
Well, there's nothing
But-
to
but
petition right
there's
now.
nothing to
Right.
petition now.
Petition on.
Yeah, there's nothing to
It's-
petition now.
There's nothing to petition.
We're just,
Can't
I
happen.
think
Let's
we
put it-
were right on the right path before to have the P and Z Commission hold its public hearing. They vote to send it to the Board of Selectmen for a policy decision. Our Board of Selectmen discuss it, come up with the language to send to a referendum.
Town meeting.
Town
No,
meeting.
to a
Just
town
a
meeting
town
for the
meeting?
ordinance.
I would do
Right,
just a town meeting.
for
Yeah.
the ordinance.
I know it's a town meeting,
If
but
there's enough people strongly feel about it, they could petition it.
People
to
will
a
come
referendum.
out.
They won't come out to a town meeting?
Oh, they
They
would.
will.
Well, they might.
will.
They came out
will.
about the deer.
but I was shocked on that one. I had no idea we'd have that many people. Yeah, we may have a lot of people, and where do you hold it? To think that we can do that on a Zoom call and accurately count votes?
You know,
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
this is gonna shake out over the next few
With all
months.
due
That's
respect,
right.
at this
I
point,
think
there's
that-
there's still a lot of
A lot of road in between
Yeah,
now
and I
and then.
think we have Dwayne here, we have other items, so I'd like to move that we.
Well, I just want, I appreciate that, but I want to be sure that the message that goes back to planning and zoning, that we all agree that P and Z will
Sure.
hold a public hearing. They will probably vote to send it over to the Board of Selectmen for a policy decision. Do you agree?
I would agree with
with
that.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's take it one step at a time,
Okay.
leave it
We'll
at
agree with
that,
that.
and let's see what
And then we'll
happens.
see what
Okay.
else happens
Yeah.
and figure it out.
All right, and in the meantime, David, you
Thank
have a
you.
lot of reading to do.
We'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff on this, I'm sure. Well, they started with this one seminar, but I didn't think it was very good. Some of the
Well, there are a lot of
materials-
questions
But there's
There are a
so
lot
many
of questions.
everywhere.
And the state's gonna have to clarify a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a very
Okay.
complicated ordinance. It
Thank you,
will.
David.
Certainly will.
Nice seeing you, David.
See you all.
Nice to see
Enjoy
you.